We're always told to worry about what comes out of a car's exhaust pipe. But what if one of the biggest dangers is coming from a part of your car you probably never even think about? Well, some incredible new research is pointing to a source of pollution that might just be hiding in plain sight.
I mean, think about it. When you hear vehicle pollution, your mind immediately goes to the engine, right? The gasoline, the exhaust fumes. But what if the real story, the hidden threat, is lurking somewhere else entirely?
What if the danger is actually coming from the only part of your car that physically touches the road? Yep, we're talking about your tires. And new research suggests they're releasing a silent chemical threat directly into the air we all have to breathe.
So this gets us into the whole world of what scientists call non-exhaust emissions. It's a fancy term, but all it really means is pollution that doesn't come from burning fuel. It comes from the simple wear and tear of your car on the road, from the brakes, from road dust, and especially from your tires. And the main vehicle for this pollution is something called PM 2.5.
So what exactly is PM 2.5? Well, it stands for particulate matter that is incredibly tiny. So small, in fact, that it can get deep down into your lungs. And here's the kicker. These tiny particles are the perfect vehicle for carrying other harmful chemicals. You can think of them as tiny, toxic sponges just floating in the air.
Which, of course, leads to the big question. What exactly are these tiny sponges soaking up? Well, a group of researchers decided to dig in and figure out the exact chemical cocktail that's coming specifically from our tires. They ran a 10-month-long study in the city of Daegu, Korea, where they collected and analyzed the city air. And what they found was pretty wild. Hiding in those tiny PM 2.5 particles were 9 different chemical additives, and they were all traced directly back to the manufacturing of car tires.
The researchers then zeroed in on 4 of these chemicals. Now, the names are a total mouthful, so for now, let's just focus on 2 of them. Benzothiazole, we'll just call it BTH, and its relative, OTH. And here's the crazy part. These chemicals were everywhere. In fact, 3 of the 4 were found in literally 100% of the air samples collected over the entire 10-month study.
But this is where the story gets really interesting. The data suggests that these chemicals aren't just passively floating around in the air. No, they're actively changing, transforming into something else entirely right above our heads.
So let's look at that first chemical, BTH. It's an additive used to make tire rubber more durable. But what the research shows is that once BTH wears off the tire and gets into the atmosphere, it reacts with other elements and, poof, it transforms into OTH. So OTH isn't added to tires directly, it's actually born in the air from its parent chemical, BTH.
Now, you'd probably expect to find more of the original chemical coming directly off the tires, right? But what the researchers found was the exact opposite. Get this, on average, there was nearly 7 times more of the transformed chemical, OTH, than the original BTH. How is that even possible?
Well, the study itself points out that there's a weak correlation between the two. In plain English, that means the amount of OTH they were finding in the air just can't be explained by the amount of BTH coming directly off of tires. There has to be some other powerful process at work in the atmosphere, just cranking out tons of OTH.
So what could be driving this massive chemical transformation? The researchers found a really strong clue, and it connects this invisible tire pollution to a much bigger global issue: climate change.
Just take a look at this chart from the study. On the bottom axis, you've got the daily maximum temperature, and on the side axis, you've got the concentration of that transformed chemical, OTH. The trend is absolutely unmistakable. As the temperature goes up, the amount of OTH in the air goes up right along with it.
So the big takeaway here is that heat acts like an accelerator. The hotter the day, the faster that original chemical from the tires transforms into this new, more abundant version. And that has a pretty stark implication. As our climate warms, this invisible pollution problem could get significantly worse.
This all leads to the most important question of all. Is this stuff actually dangerous to us? To find out, the researchers ran a human health risk assessment, specifically looking at the lifetime cancer risk from inhaling these chemicals found in the city air.
Now, to put their findings into context, we need some kind of a benchmark. Regulatory bodies like the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency have a standard for what's considered an acceptable or safe level of lifetime cancer risk from any given pollutant in the air.
And that safety benchmark is a lifetime cancer risk of 1 in 1 million. Generally, if a chemical in the air presents a risk higher than this, it triggers further investigation and maybe even regulation.
So keep that number in your head, 1 in a million.
Okay, so with that 1 in a million benchmark in mind, what do you think the risk was? What was the risk calculated for that transformed tire chemical, OTH, at the concentrations they actually found in the air of Daegu?
The number the researchers calculated was 3,720 in 1 million. And no, that is not a typo. The estimated lifetime cancer risk from this single chemical was dramatically higher than the safety benchmark.
I mean, let's just put that in perspective. The potential cancer risk from this one temperature-supercharged chemical from tire dust was calculated to be over 3,700 times higher than the level that regulators generally consider acceptable.
So what are the key takeaways from all this? First, tire wear is a serious and mostly ignored source of chemical pollution. Second, chemicals released from tires can transform in the atmosphere into something far more abundant and potentially more dangerous. And third, this entire hidden process appears to be supercharged by heat, creating a direct and troubling link to climate change.
So, we end with a final thought. We rely on our tires every single day to connect us safely to the road. But this research forces us to ask a difficult question. What if, in doing so, they're also connecting us to an invisible danger, one that's only getting worse as our planet heats up?